There you go.
Thank you. There we go. All right. We'll call ourselves officially started here. And good evening. Thank you for being here. These are difficult and challenging times for all of us. And the fact that anyone will come and sit in front of a Zoom screen for an hour and a half means a lot to me. And I think it's a big deal because it's really easy for any of us right now to say, no, I don't think so. I don't feel like it tonight. So thank you for being here. Um, so one of the things that I love is natural burial. And I live remote and off grid, for those of you who don't know, in the Chilcotin, um, west of Williams Lake, north of Risky Creek. And my husband and I have 48 acres up here in the middle of nowhere. It's absolutely beautiful, quiet, um, full of birds and wildlife, and no humans for many, many miles. So it's just David and I here, and our little dog, and sometimes chickens, sometimes sheep. Right now, it's just the little dog. Um, and Our passion is stewarding this small corner of the planet for as long as we can be here. Um, of course, the land belongs to the Chilcotin, and hopefully one day it will belong to them again. Um, so yeah, so we're here for a whisker of time, and it's a beautiful place to live, and it would be a beautiful place to die and be buried. One of the things I would really like to see in British Columbia is what's available in Oregon and I believe in Washington, where you can have a backyard burial. It's not in Washington, eh? So Oregon for sure. Um, I always kind of envy Oregon because they seem to have every available option in that state, and I would sure like to see BC get with the program. Natural burial, green burial, conservation burial. There's quite a few options in the lower part of the province, in the southern part of the province. One of the reasons I call these sessions Beyond Hope is because most of BC is beyond the small community of Hope, and there are very few natural burial options beyond Hope. And so, because I've always lived in the well, I lived in Vancouver for a while, but mostly I've lived in rural areas of British Columbia. And I believe we're dreadfully underserved in that respect, even though there's a tremendous amount of land available. Um, Lots and lots of land that could be conserved. You know, conservation burial is really my ideal because our planet's dying and because we need to conserve land, and natural burial in on land means that it can be conserved, right? It can be looked after. Um, I mean, we can have green burials in um, municipal cemeteries, and there are quite a few of those, and that's a really good start. It's good low-hanging fruit. It's really nice to have that option, but it's not ideal as far as sort of preserving and protecting land. Um, and it's not really my ideal of a natural burial. One of my memes that I often put out is bury me in the forest under the trees. You know, that's a I think I think that natural burial really belongs out in the wilderness, not in a municipal cemetery. Although, like I say, it's a good start, and I encourage every municipal cemetery to have a section that is natural burial. Penticton has a nice section. That's sort of where I grew up as a teenager, and it's nice to see that they've done that there. Um, it's it's nice, you know, it's overlooking Okanagan Lake. Lakeview Cemetery in Penticton is a really beautiful spot. Lots of my ancestors are buried there in conventional graves. Um, and it's a lovely spot, like I say, overlooking the lake. And so the natural burial site there is it's a nice option. And there are other uh, green burial sites in conventional cemeteries that are really lovely, and the cemetery um, owners are working on making them absolutely beautiful. I know the one on in Victoria and Vancouver Island is gorgeous. And it was the first. Pashta's mom was buried there, and she'll talk a bit about that later. And yeah, so I don't really have an agenda, as you might be able to tell. I'm just kind of rambling about what I love. And when I talk about natural burial and about preserving land, I always want to mention the fact that British Columbia is pretty much built on indigenous, it is indigenous land. And so many of our communities and our shopping centers and our buildings are built over indigenous sacred land, sacred graveyards. And there's so many of them that are not protected and not like I know that even in Williams Lake, um, one of the malls was built over a burial ground, and it wasn't really recognized until a few years ago. And when they originally dug it up, they were digging up bones and skulls. And I know that's happened all over the province. So it's one of the things that I want us collectively to be aware of when we're talking about natural burial grounds and about them being preserved and protected, is that there's a good chance that we're building our natural burial grounds over sacred burial grounds that are already there that we don't even know about anymore. So just mentioning that.
Nicola,
Um,
can I add in that
please.
another option that nobody seems to be really working on is reclaiming the old cemeteries because they were green. And so reclaiming them for the land that is still available within them, because a lot of them are not full.
And many of them are, Pashta. I've run into so many up in this area that I've looked into with pioneer graveyards and old, not even pioneer, but older graveyards in small communities. And I keep hitting roadblocks. So we're full, or we'll bury cremated remains, but we're not doing full body burials. But I know, I mean, BC is dotted all over with graveyards, and so it's well worth checking out in any of our areas in the States too, for old pioneer graveyards, and find out if there's, because as Pastor says, they were, up until 100 years ago, that's the only way we buried was naturally, without all the concrete, without the fiberglass, and yeah. So I have invited tonight Pashta Mary Moon and Madeline Christie, Maddie and Pashta, because one of the things that I find works so beautifully with natural burial, of course, are home funerals and community-led funerals. And in rural BC, well, I guess in the whole province, but in rural BC, home funerals, they're difficult unless you know what you're doing. A lot of us say, well, I'd love to have a home funeral, but unless you've got people, a community, a family around you who understands what that is and how to do it, um, in the moment when someone you love dies, if they die at home or in the hospital, we very often kind of throw up our hands and say, well, I don't know how to do it, so I'm going to call a funeral home. So the more we know how to do it, the more we can help each other learn and um, and share the information, the easier it will be to accomplish a home funeral. And very often that means also a natural burial, or a conservation burial. And so that's why I've invited Pashta and Maddie here tonight. Um, we've got, they have an amazing training program. They've had it for quite a while, and they brought it online recently so that anyone can take it from anywhere. And one of the things that I was really excited to learn is that they have managed to persuade Consumer Protection to provide credits for their training program, so that for funeral directors, embalmers, and they can go into a bit more detail about that. And I understand that Maddie's mostly responsible for that wonderful bit of news. And so one of the things with that, with those credits, CPUs, I think they're called. Yeah. Yep.
CEUs.
CEU, when we're rural and remote, there's a provincial law now that if you're 200 kilometers from the nearest funeral home and your roads are impassable, that you can apply to act like a funeral director so that you don't have to hire a funeral home funeral director. And so if you take this course, it's going to be a feather in your cap, whoever's cap, if they apply to consumer protection and the province to act as a funeral director. And I'm not saying it's going to allow you to do that, but it's going to be another um, feather in your cap, right? Another easier way to make that happen. Um, those rules were changed by George Westwood on Haida Gwaii, who's a wonderful man. He's been a volunteer funeral director on Haida Gwaii for years and years. And he went to bat and made those changes to the legislation. Um, I have some information here and some resources, and I'll share them with you, or in the if we don't get to them, I'll put them in the recording, of where you can find this information about the legislation in BC, a little more detail about it. So, has anyone just joined us that we haven't said hello to? Yeah, Lena. Most of us were kind of chit-chatting a few minutes ahead of 6:30. And if there's anyone here we haven't said hello to, I'd like to do that before we carry on.
Hi.
Jesse.
Oh, hey, I'm Jesse.
Hi.
I am out of Dallas, Texas. So I
Oh,
saw
right
your,
on.
thank you. I saw your class on Instagram. So I've recently become a death doula, certified death doula, and I'm, like many death doulas, have been doing this work as this role in the family for a long time, before there was this movement and the certification process. And but it's amazing and it's great. So I'm here to, for education, just to learn about, green burial in BC. And I love that people are here from the Pacific Northwest. I'm just really in like information gathering mode right now. But yeah, I have a day job that I'm hoping to transition to be a full-time doula. So I'm getting there slowly but surely,
Right
building
on.
up the business. So yeah, I'm excited about it. So I'm just thought I'd tune in and see what's going on around y'all.
Great. Thanks, Jesse. Welcome here.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
And Lena.
Hello, my name is Lena and I'm from Burnaby. I'm also an educated death doula, but I'm not active in the business. It's challenging to find a role as you search through it. So I'm learning, and the green burial is very important to me personally and from a professional point of view as well.
Great. Thank you. Welcome here. Who else haven't we said hello to? Did I just see a Jude come and go?
Yes, you did.
Scared them off. Okay, well, we'll carry on. Maybe they'll come back. So yeah, Madeline, Maddie, and Pashta. I wonder we could maybe turn things over to you for a little bit. And really, we had a chat a few days ago about tonight's session, but there was nothing really set in stone about what you're going to talk about. But you've heard me natter on about what my interest is in your course. And so I will just turn it over to the two of you. Whoever wants to go first.
I was thinking that it might be good to go a little bit backwards, to show people a little bit about my mom's process, um, since we've been talking about the burial side of things. And then we can get into talking about the course. And then once you have an understanding of the course, then it would be clearer what our relationship with consumer protection is. But I do want to, before anything starts, to sort of to let people know that all across Canada, Quebec is the hardest. Anyone can take care of their own dead. And there are actually codes for what essentially means you are a temporary funeral director for this one event. right? So it isn't, there's that restriction that Nicola talked about, but that doesn't mean that anybody can't take the role of a funeral director for their own person. Um, so to talk about my mom, very, very quickly, she was approved for MAID, medical aid in dying. She was 90, just made her 90th birthday. And she was in the hospital, and it was obvious she was not getting better. She was getting worse and worse. So I called in the guy who had assessed her, the doctor who had assessed her. It's a really, really wonderful man, young man, who's setting up the MAID house here in Victoria. And so he did it, and it was really beautiful. My son was with me. Each of us held her hand. I sang her into her death. Had some complications because they wouldn't let us take the body directly. They had to go to the morgue first, and the morgue was very confused about why this body was going to somebody's home, not a funeral home. But that got resolved. By midnight, she had come back to my house. And I live in a bachelor apartment with 2 offices in it. And I still managed to make space for her. So you don't have to have a lot of space. So I had her for essentially 3.5 days. I had her from Monday night, midnight, until Friday morning. I did hire our friendly funeral director people to do the transportation because I didn't have a van to work with, or a large a truck or something like that. So they came and got her in the morning on Friday, and then Friday afternoon, she had a green burial. So I'm just going to show you a few pictures, just because sometimes seeing something means a lot more. Okay, so if I can now. Just hold a second here. I need to put this in the right order. Yeah, good. Okay. All right, so this is my mom. After we had finished all the body care, she was in a shroud. She chose to go naked. She wanted plum silk sheet as a shroud, but we didn't.
don't see
the-
anything,
Don't see your
Pastor.
pictures yet.
No picture.
Yeah, no, I know, I haven't done it yet.
Ah,
So she wanted plum silk. We couldn't find silk anywhere in Victoria, so she got mine, which is 100% cotton. And yes, so here she is, as she was in my home for 3.5 days. Later on, I came across an old document about what she wanted, and I got everything except for one thing. She wanted a sandwich so she wouldn't go hungry in the afterlife. This is a photograph of the actual burial. That's me. And the funeral director that was sort of supervising, because they have to, in a public cemetery, was wonderful. He was like constantly taking my coffee out of my hand when I needed both hands, and then giving it back to me. And he was just there, really right on there. So this is actually a little backwards. This is my mom in the grave, and her face was actually not covered. It was like it was at home until she was actually lowered in the service. So I did the service. And people have asked me what the brown stuff is on the side. It's a wood liner that they use to keep the grave walls from collapsing in. And then once she's in there, the straps are sort of jiggled off of the bottom and the top. And you see on the left side, there's a silver bar. There's one on the right side as well, that has the straps are attached to it, and they just roll that. And then they take the bars away. And then this is me filling in the grave, which we got to do. It was really beautiful of them. I mean, not only they put cedar boughs on it's just a piece of wood that she was lowered down on. They put cedar boughs on that. As you can see, they put up this platform, this wood platform, just so we had a really solid place because it's winter and the ground is really soggy. And they put cedar bars all around it. They put cedar boughs around the dirt. The dirt was so heavy, we knew we weren't going to be able to finish, actually fill the grave. So we asked them to leave us enough to cover her body, which we did. So if anybody's got any questions about that. This was in the Royal Oak Burial Park and their particular area called the Woodlands. And actually, I did a green burial there. I was the celebrant and I'm not allowed to use the word, but I'm going to, death midwife for this person in 2010. So it was one of the very first that were done.
So Pashta, the wooden liner that they use, which it's just lovely. What a lovely. They've obviously been at it a long time. They're doing it right, you know, with the wooden platform around the grave for secure footing, and the wooden sides. Do they take those out when you were there, or did it happen later when they filled the grave?
It happened later because we were only able to cover her body, so it was still
Right.
Possible to take it out.
Right.
And this is a development because in 2010, when I did one, they used steel.
Ah.
So, and there was no platform to make sure that you were, we're going to be falling from soggy ground and stuff. So that they have developed it, and there were no cedar boughs, so they've developed both the more ecological side of it and the more sort of aesthetic side of it as well.
And practical and beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, right on. It's lovely.
Can I ask, Pashta, how deep was the grave for your mother?
4 feet,
Okay.
which is the best for a natural burial. You want aerobic and anaerobic bacteria.
Angie's asking, is that deep enough to add more people? And I don't think at 4 feet.
I think you probably could, but it depends on what, I mean, we're not allowed to do that, first of all. We don't have the legislation for it here. Although I think it's an excellent idea. I certainly don't care if somebody's buried on top of me. They don't have to be my family or friend. But I think you have to have enough ground on top, on the bottom and on the top to get the bacteria, right?
So it might be a length of time too that someone is buried before a second body would naturally decompose and
right.
Yeah.
And
at the Heritage Cemetery where I will be resting eventually, I'm going to be at 4 feet, but I know that they have the option to 9 feet, 6 feet, and 4 feet. You can actually have 3 people legal here in BC. That's in Surrey.
Okay, good to know. I didn't know that.
Thanks.
And I've been dealing with our cemetery mostly, so that's good.
I think they're doing it in Vancouver in the main cemetery in Vancouver as well.
Mount Saint something or another.
The big one.
Yeah.
Of course, at 9 feet, you don't have the bacterial activity that you have at 4 feet. So
that's right.
Yeah. So I wouldn't go for that. But 6 feet, you got some bacterial activity. 4 feet is what I would recommend. I always wanted to be the dirt bag. I look forward to be a dirt bag. Well, in no rush. There you go.
You've been dying to say that, haven't you?
Are you talking about in Vancouver, the Mountain View?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the biggest cemetery here. And I have a question. So when your mom passed away in a hospice or hospital, you kept her for 3 days. Were you able to close her body like in a bag? Because there was no, how to say, there's no preparation. Like in the morgue, then they prepare the body and everything like that, and body it?
They don't prepare the body in the morgue, they just cool it.
Okay.
She was in a body bag as she was being transferred from the morgue to my house. And then midnight Monday night, and then she was just on the gurney, which they just left with me, which I was really pleased about that they did that because it made things simpler. So she was just left on the gurney, and we did the washing and dress, or not dressing because she didn't want to be dressed, but shrouding her on the gurney. And then they came and picked her up, and the body bag was underneath all of what we were doing. So they just closed it up again while they were moving through the building.
Was it her wishes to stay in your house? This was my mother's fault.
You're cutting out pretty badly. I can't make you out. Does anyone else?
Yeah. No, it's really hard to hear.
Can you try again?
I'll text it.
Okay. Any other questions before we go ahead?
It would seem to me if you are buried at 4 feet and 2 years later, somebody else in your family or somebody else wants to be buried, you're gone. And they dig down and they only need to go 4 feet to where you were. And then they can bury you on top of that. I'm sure they're not going to be digging up your skull. Probably, are they? Do you know?
2 years, that's pretty quick for decomposition
Yeah.
of,
I
Yeah.
think it's
of,
20
ma- of
Bones.
major bones.
It's 20 years, I think. I attended something recently with this, and they are able to potentially bury on top if it's agreeable to everybody. After 20 years, everything is gone.
Depending on the soil too.
Right. If it's
That's
buried
right.
not deeply, the 2 to 3 feet, they were saying, which is deep enough for animals not to get at it, but shallow enough for decomposition.
And so the composting piece of this issue, I've been misled, perhaps?
So I can talk about that a little bit. You're talking about natural organic reduction?
No, not
Yeah.
reduction
No,
in a facility, but in the ground.
Oh, in the ground.
and
You know,
how quickly does the body decompose?
I just know a
at the-
story. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I just remember a story from Germany where they do natural burial by tradition. But everyone has to be buried in a church cemetery. So you rent the space for 15 or 30 years, and then they exhume the bones and place them in an ossuary, like a real ossuary, where it's actually bone, not just cremated remain. And then they can rotate through the ground, the grave. So I think bones last quite a while. I don't know.
I predict that in the not far future, we'll probably be using natural ingredients, maybe fungi, to expedite the decomposition of the body. So I think maybe even if bodies are buried at 9 and 6 feet, maybe they'll be able to add something. I'm quite intrigued with the mycelium suits that some people have been talking about for a number of years. So because death is some kind of becoming, which is a good thing, I guess, but I think it's we boomers, maybe Nicola, we always like to do things differently, and we're all starting to talk about death and dying. And I think even just natural reduction, gee, that wasn't even a thing just a few years ago, or people talked about. So I think there'll be a lot of advancements in the next few years. That's my 2 cents.
I would
Thank
think
you.
Canada is big enough for nobody to need to be buried on top of someone else. Now, my home country hasn't got a lot of places to bury people, and cremation has become way more the done thing because we just don't have land. But in America and Canada, don't tell me you haven't got enough land. Come on now.
Is the
There is lots of land, and like I was saying, particularly in rural BC, there's a tremendous amount of land and that needs reclamation too, where natural burial would be an ideal solution for reclaiming places that have been logged off, messed with, chemicaled, all sorts of things. And in British Columbia, we have the highest cremation rate, I believe, in North America. And so it's not about space. It's about preference. It's about ease. It's about, do people feel like they belong to a place anymore? And I think that has maybe more to do with it than anything else. So much of our population is urban now, and many urban dwellers come from smaller communities, but not so connected anymore. And I think unless we have a really strong connection to place, we have a difficult time visualizing a burial. Like, where do you get buried? The big cemeteries, the cemeteries in the Lower Mainland are close to capacity. The cost of a conventional burial and even a green burial is out of reach for an awful lot of people. For most
can't afford to
people I
die.
know.
My
I was
mom-
gonna
and
say
so
that.
My mom's burial, the grave, and the internment was $8,100.
yeah,
So for a lot of people, I mean, my mom had the money, but for a lot of people, that's just beyond their capacity in terms of
it is.
I'm
Fine.
sorry, I couldn't hear how many dollars.
$8,100
Canadian.
That's a lot.
Canadian. Yes.
In Vancouver, a plot is $30,000 to $50,000 for the plot.
Yeah,
And that doesn't include
more than
any
more than we
service,
paid for
any
our first house.
caskets or, yeah. So,
But
you know,
I was gonna say that, yeah, there's plenty of land, but what's the price of real estate where anyone lives, really? And that's what you're gonna be paying for. And so I think a big driver in the direct cremation is cost. People don't
Is,
have
yeah.
that kind of money anymore.
sorry,
And
I dropped you.
convenience. It's convenience too, right?
Yeah.
Because we are lately, in the last 50, 60 years, we hand off our dead to the professionals rather than taking care of our dead ourselves. And so when we hand them off, it's direct cremation. It's cost effective. It's easy. You don't have to think about it again. Not that people aren't grieving and thinking about it, but it's that, our society
Well, I
hands
think
almost
as you
everything over.
along with the loss of feeling like you belong to a place, there's that spiritual belonging too that is kind of lost, and also the like people don't know what they're missing when they are not thinking about taking care of their own dead, right?
That's right.
I think we've also been sold a bill of goods in my area here. Everybody will say, well, is that legal? And the word is, from me, yes, it is. But common knowledge makes them think, you can't do that. We've got funeral parlors for that. As though they didn't, and they didn't have funeral parlors 200 years ago. Oh gosh, what did they do? And I'm trying to make it come back as a method that is totally reasonable and struggling while I do it, but the open eyes and the dropped chins is amazing. So publicity is part of it. If we can make the death industry become not a taboo so much, it might help. But
I think Abraham Lincoln and the Civil Wars is what really turned the page on that, because soldiers had to be returned home. So formaldehyde became very popular in those days. And of course, Abraham Lincoln traveled on the train for a long journey around the country. So it was that's when I guess it really became a boom strategy. But I mean,
Embalming,
myself,
for sure.
yeah, I'm really keen to look more important, possibly getting involved in NOR. It's some call it terramation, and I know Anna was talking about that earlier. She wanted to speak some more, but it's basically a service that rendered the body into a dirt, and when you leave the building, you are legally a soil. So you can be dispersed. Doesn't matter where. You can in the garden, outside the road, whatever. You're pure soil. Like you're no longer considered human corpse or whatever you want to call it, you know, and there's 100% organic. So that is very interesting to me.
It's a very good option. And of course, Katrina Spade, who I absolutely love, started that whole thing as an urban
Yes.
solution
And
to natural burial. Right.
Yeah.
That was her impetus for beginning
Well,
that whole process.
I'd
And
say that
it
she was
is.
first.
It's an,
I can't say she was first because I was making some noise that in the early 2000, you know,
oh, she
but
was first.
yes, she was searched to make it
I'll
happen.
find
You
the
know,
history.
I was unsuccessful.
Credit where
But
credit is due.
I wrote a lot of noise back in 2005, I think it was. For a couple of years, I had registered my funeral company just to lobby for that effect. And but I was just going broke, you know. I couldn't afford to push it forward. And that was here in BC. And I really enjoyed the ride. And I kept all my business cards and registrations and all that communications. But all the government's response were pretty much disgusted by the idea, you know. And I guess
The
now
times they are changing, but never fast enough, Marcel.
Yeah.
yeah.
I wanted to mention just something, and then I think we should get into the training program so we have enough time to actually be clear about that. But something that Anna was saying and Nicole was saying, or Nicola was saying, I think that once we get to the point of recognizing that there is a spiritual, I want to say responsibility, but that's putting a little bit too much
Component.
component. All right, I'll use that. There's a spiritual component to having your body go 300 miles away to be buried in land that has been stripped or destroyed in some other way, which then means that it is allowed to reclaim itself naturally. And the law is, I understand, that you cannot do anything to that land other than that piece of land where you are, other than just tend it, but you cannot cut down trees for 100 years after the burial. So it's an element of, I guess what I'm trying to say is that in that connection to space, it doesn't have to be my living space. It has to be the space I'm concerned about. I just wanted to add that in. It's one way of thinking about it.
And it's all about education and advocacy.
Okay. I've been talking.
Why we're all here tonight, right?
So Maddie, why don't you start off with the course and
Yeah.
or do you want me to start with the early stuff and then okay.
You can intro it and I'll speak
okay.
to it. Yeah.
Okay, so I became aware of home funerals developing in the US around 2006, and Jerry Grace Lyons, who's one of the grandmothers of the movement, I got in contact with her, and her family has a summer home up here on the island. So I got to meet her, and I couldn't go down and train with her, but she gave me her training manual to work from, and then she did come up several years later. And so around 2010, three of us, two of us in Victoria, one on the East Coast, decided to try and build some kind of educational format. And what ended up happening was CINDEO, which is an acronym for Canadian Integrative Network for Death Education and Alternatives. It's also a little girl's name, meaning moonlight, so it's appropriate. So we started building resources right through death, actually, sort of home funerals being the sort of middle part, but then all of that advanced care planning, all of that sort of stuff beforehand, and then all of the stuff that happens after death, green burials, and various things for across Canada and for every province in Canada. So to my knowledge, it is the most comprehensive site on that sort of pre-pan death, the pan meaning all the way across through the process in Canada, and I think in the US as well. Sort of probably rivaled by the Home Funeral Alliance, which I'm also a part of. And then in 2014, after I'd been actually trained by Jerry Grace, I started doing workshops that would be like 3 days for Friday, Saturday, Sunday in person. And that went on until the pandemic. And so we had to move it on to Zoom. And we did that for several years. And then Maddie said, I'm taking a course that's online, and I think we could do this online and make it much more extensive and still be able to have the sort of Zoom ability to chat by having community chats. So that's what we did. And originally it was just the home funeral. Now we do home funerals, green burials, celebrate how to do deathing rituals, how to deal with children, and some basic stuff on grief. So Maddie, take over.
Yeah, so we worked, I guess, for a year and a bit on that, starting in 2020, end of 2023, I'd say. And we launched April of last year, 2024, soft launch kind of. And a few months later, I applied with Consumer Protection BC for it to be on a list of continuing education courses for funeral directors and embalmers. And it got accepted just recently, like in December. That was after I followed up once with them because it was taking a bit, but they got it done and they approved it, which was, wasn't sure if they would, but pretty exciting. And so now funeral directors and embalmers here in BC need 6 credits for each one of those licenses every 2 years. So they can either get 3 credits for their funeral director license or 3 for their embalmer's license. And I guess we've had a couple comments with people being like, well, why would embalmers need to know about home funerals? But a couple things that the course touches on, or a few things, relate to embalming technology, sanitation, anatomy, and legal aspects, and public health. So it's good for embalmers as well as funeral directors just to know how those all kind of work in a home funeral setting, and to stay up to date on kind of what the community's changing wants are around taking care of their own dead. So
There's part of this too is that a lot of funeral directors don't know that it's legal to take care of your own dead. And there was a comment when I was at Royal Oak with burying my mother. One of the directors there, who used to be the funeral president of the Funeral Directors Association of BC, or whatever it's called, said there had been some comments about embalmers. Why would they need to take courses from non-professionals? Well, the whole point, from my perspective, is for funeral directors is to know what really happens, to know it's legal, to know how they can support a family if family needs transportation, if family needs them to do the paperwork, and how to leave them alone otherwise, right? To not be pushing things that, like they often do. And with embalmers, It's pretty rare, but if you are transporting a body anywhere on public transport, it has to be embalmed. So if somebody dies here in Victoria and they need for it to go on a train or a plane to Montreal, the body has to be embalmed. I'm not sure how they can.
Pashta, what about a ferry?
I don't think so, because it would be in a
Oh,
car on
yeah.
the ferry,
Right.
in a
Yeah,
private car.
thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's one possibility. Somebody wants to do a home funeral in Montreal, but the person is here. So they would arrive embalmed for the home funeral. I also had a case years and years and years ago of suicide of a young man. His mother was out of the country, and she's the one that knew me, so she didn't get back until the third day. He was already at a funeral home, and my role was to negotiate with the funeral home on how to bring the body back. And they did allow it, but they insisted it had to be embalmed, partially for their own protection, because they are responsible for the body, but also because it was already 3 days. And they were just worried that there would be some decomposition. So it's not totally irrelevant to embalmers.
One thing I just want to mention too, I think Garrett was asking about, he called it secretions, they call it purge. There's a lot, I'm a licensed funeral director in Washington, but we have dual licensing, so I didn't go to mortuary school, and I did it by interning, and we did a lot of unembalmed viewings with families, being like family directed funerals. So at the funeral home, but and in any case, since then I've encountered a lot of people who've been through mortuary school who are really worried about purge. And I can say, you know, of the at least 100 viewings that I did of unembalmed bodies, there was really only very little, some people who were like, you know, died in their bathtub or something. But it's not as common as they're led to believe, and it's the same as if you're caring for your loved one as they're going through the dying process, you're going to clean them up. It's nothing different. So I think it's wonderful what you're doing. The CEUs are a great idea. The National Home Funeral Alliance is going to try to get into mortuary schools with a program. But if we don't get there, the CEUs, I don't know if anyone's thought of that, but I love it. I'm glad I'm here today. So thank you.
Yeah.
So I guess, you know, sort of, do we need to talk more about what a home funeral is? And what's in the program in terms of that? A home funeral includes a lot of things. Primarily, it is the washing, dressing, moving, cooling of the body, because the body has to be kept at about 4 degrees Celsius, not Fahrenheit. And so we sort of teach people how to wash the body, how to deal with purge, how to keep the body cold, how to move the body safely. We also have a whole section on what the actual regulations for each province are. So, for example, in BC, if you're going to move the body, you have to have a permit to do that, a transport permit, private transport permit. In Alberta, you don't need it. So I had one case where someone was moving from BC to Alberta, and they had to get permits for the BC part of the trip, but not the Alberta part of it. So there's things like that. And so we give people the information on the forms that they have to fill. And that's a really important part of the program, because they're very hard to find online, and some of them aren't online. The course has them because I've gone directly to the supervisors to get them. they're not online, particularly the registration of death, which is the sort of the main form paperwork that a funeral home would do, right? So it's not online, not for BC anyways. So there's a whole section on what kind of paperwork, what kind of requirements there are for each province in Canada. And then, Maddie, why don't you take over and talk about the green burial section?
Yeah, we have a greening death chapter. So we just talk about natural burial, and we kind of go over all the alternative lower impact disposition options like natural burial, alkaline hydrolysis, natural organic reduction. And then, yeah, we talk about burial at sea and, the mushroom suit. And, well, we touch on that. Yeah, just kind of let people know their options and where they're legal or not legal. And, we tons of resources throughout the whole course. Even quite a few that point to the US, like resources for US citizens. Yeah, lots of resources. And what else was I going to say about the greening and the death one? I can't remember. It's gone. But yeah, just lots of information. Oh, and the National Home Funeral Alliance too. We point to you guys all the time. Just, I love, yeah, NHFA, like awesome stuff. You guys have resources, videos, like it's amazing. So thank
Yeah,
you.
fantastic. Really good resource. So one of the things that is so important to me about this course you are offering, Pashta and Maddie, is that we talk about community death care, but so many of us don't have that community, right? We went through the pandemic, we've kind of separated, we're maybe coming back together, but boy, it's slow and difficult and the state of the world and all that. And so the idea that we can learn through this course so that we can not so much create a community, but we can be the germ of the community so that we understand what we're doing. So that when someone in our family dies, we can be that person, whether we're a doula or a whatever we are, whatever we do, that we can be that person who knows how to do it, because it's extremely difficult when we don't have the information, when we think that, oh, I'd like to do it, or someone in the family would like a home funeral. There's an awful lot that needs to be handled, like you're saying, Pastor, with the forms, and it's just an awful lot. And so I think that's why we so often hand our beloveds off to the professionals, because it's overwhelming. And I think that your course is a real blessing to the overwhelm. So thank you. I really appreciate that you're doing this.
We also have a whole section on deathing rights. So people want to do their own funeral service or memorial, whatever you want to do, just some basic stuff about how you work a ceremony to really involve people and make it meaningful. We have a section on children, dealing with children. It's fairly small, but just talking about how children deal with death, which actually they deal with it better than we do in many ways. And then just some really basic stuff on the grieving process, but sort of a few different modalities on how grieving happens. And then a lot of, as Manny said, all of the sections have lots of links to other information that we don't need to repeat, right? So it's all there. And we also, because we're not in person, well, actually, I think it was 2014 or 15, we created videos of how to do this that are on the Sandia site, but we use them as for the course so that people get to actually see people doing things. And the man who was our dead person was actually the man who came and helped me shroud my mother, which was really nice to include him in my life.
Yeah.
Any other questions anybody has? Oh, I want to say something else, and I'm going to be a little on the boastful side. Our course costs $300 Canadian. Anything comparable is up in the thousands, and sometimes the thousands US, which means it's another third bigger for us. But that was one of the things that we also felt strongly with it, that we wanted it to be accessible. And once you take the course, you have lifelong access as long as we keep it going. So you can go in and read what other people have thought or what their experiences are. We also have community chats once a month where people can talk about their experience or ask questions that have come up as they've gone through the material. And Maddie and I both respond to every assignment and their assignments all the way through the program to make sure that people really are grasping what's necessary. Anything else, Maddie, that we should comment on?
I
I'm
guess,
interested.
yeah, I mean,
Sorry.
we just really wanted to keep it accessible. Like most of the information in the course is on Cyndia for free. It's an extensive site, so you need to be willing to explore it. But if you're a different learner and you just want to go through this very like structured course, then it's pretty reasonable price to do so. And yeah, it's been awesome starting to build that community. I've already met like a ton of people even just in our town from it, and yeah, it's exciting. And it's just at the very beginning too. Like I think we've had 7 students since April, so it's been slow, but it's been really good so far.
Is this?
And I really hope it picks up. I'm so delighted, and one of the reasons I was excited to have you here tonight is the fact that you are offering it at such an incredibly low price. Like you say, compared to any other course that I've looked at, $300 Canadian is peanuts. And thank you. It's I know what you offer is invaluable. Cyndia website was the first website I found when I began to look into death and dying online. And Pashta has always been kind of a sage to me. She's been doing this work forever, and she's wise and wonderful. And I'm so glad to see Maddie and Pashta working together and offering their wisdom. Just thank you very much. And as much as we can, I would ask that everyone here get the word out about this course, about Cyndia for sure. The website is absolutely tremendous. It is, I mean, you could spend weeks and weeks in there and not get through everything. And it's fun and it's valuable and it's interesting.
Is this a course that could translate into several day, Friday, Saturday in a town like mine, where officials and community leaders could be invited, and we wouldn't have a specialist, we'd have an encourager, that would be me, but I don't know what the course consists of. Would it be something I could MC, so to speak, in my hometown?
I did put a link to, it says Cyndia in the chat there, and it's a
Oh.
direct link to the course, which is called By My Own Heart and Hand. And Pashta and Maddie have offered a good, wonderful overview of what the course is. And I believe there's also you can kind of look at one of the sections of the course to see what it's like. And I don't see any reason why you couldn't, well, I don't know, Pashta, maybe you need to answer that, but I don't see any reason why you couldn't get people together.
We've had this come up before, and it's a little tricky because, and Madeline may need to speak to this too. It's sort of unfair for one person to have to pay $300, and that's only for themselves, and for then a whole group of people to only pay $300. It's kind of not fair. But on the other hand, one of the things that Maddie started doing, and it is to have practice sessions with people who are interested in doing home funerals, and she's the leader because she has the information, right? So I mean, certainly that's possible for one person to take the course and then pass on the major information that they need to an in-person situation. I wanted to say, and this is kind of in relation to what you were saying, Earl, the course, okay, what is it? How many chapters are there, Maddie? I can never remember.
I think there are 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, one of those is paperwork and legal legal information, and that's going to be different in another country. But everything else is equally workable for countries outside of Canada, and especially if it's like the US. And I actually have had a couple of US people, not in the online course, but before when we were doing on Zoom. I go with them through the National Home Funerals Alliance to find the information that they need for their particular state. And so we're willing to do that for anybody to help them find the legal requirement stuff. So we're quite open to people outside of Canada as well.
I have a question at that effect there that concerns me. I'm a truck driver, long haul. I might drop dead anywhere, so my information to my family is like, I don't want to be transported anything. I no longer need this vessel. Just find wherever I am, find the closest green funeral or natural or anything, whatever. Just do not transport me, And I'm just wondering how the legalities would be with that, because every states have different rules, but basically, is that even feasible?
Are you talking about outside the province and outside the country, Marcel?
Yeah.
Well, with either it's within BC or in Ohio or wherever. I mean, I don't have a reservation to where, but I go a lot of places. And
yeah, the problem, Marcel, is somebody has to take care of your body.
Okay.
Right. So if you die on the road, you pretty much, I think, have to go to a funeral home because you don't have family or friends with you to take care of the body.
So will that be forced to be repatriated here?
That I don't know. Anna, do you know?
No, we bury Canadians too.
Thank you. That's so generous of you. Hopefully they're dead.
But it's important, but don't you think it's important, Marcel, that your family or the people that they will be contacting, if your body has to be transported to a funeral home, before they do anything, your next of kin has to be made aware of it. So then you just need to make sure that they know what your wishes are. That's really important.
Right.
And not only that, but I have tattoos on each side to inform whomever looks after me that I am allergic to formaldehyde. It could be fatal.
That's handy.
And,
But yeah, if your family still has power of disposition, even if it's in the United States.
Yeah.
So.
Marcel, I'm just showing you that I have a tattoo that's DNR on my wrist.
Yeah.
Right.
And on my chest, I have no CPR.
Very good.
I also have the form, on me, but for paramedics to first notice that I do not want to be resuscitated.
So they don't usually take our shirt off to.
Well, I'm not going to show you right now.
Right?
If they're going to do any cardio stuff, try to start my heart
Right.
again, they would be pulling down
That's
the
right, of
church
course.
and they'd see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Any other questions or comments or thoughts?
I wanted to say something about, the course is wonderful. Someone here, was talking about mentoring. So if you have an active, um, opportunity to take care of someone who's passed or is passing, maybe there is some way that Cynthia could kind of connect people who need to do the hands-on, but also like that idea of getting people together to practice it, because I think that's also a big barrier for people is up here they can feel like they know it, but they don't really know it until they've even on a pretend dead person done it with their hands. So I think that's another really important component that's hard for us to switch to when we're doing these great Zoom courses online. But that's about the putting seeds in different communities and getting people together and yeah, in person kind of thing.
So Anna, I've been thinking about that too, as far as, with the fact that we don't necessarily have a community or a family that's going to pitch in and help. Can we expand this online community? So my husband drops dead here, I could connect virtually with 4 or 5 of you, and you could help me through the process. Is that,
That's
I see that as a
totally possible.
possibility
Yeah.
in our future, right? That's an option, particularly for people who are very rural, like myself. Who, it's
Even
very
in a
difficult for people to get out here at some times of the year, almost impossible. And so how do I get help? Maybe I call 5 or 6 people on mine, and together we
Maybe we should add a
manage it.
hotline to the NHFA's website.
Yes.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Good
Yes,
idea.
absolutely. Yeah.
The other thing too is like I've consulted on a home funeral which was happening in Vancouver, and the caretaker sister was doing a home funeral, and she'd actually come and trained with me to do it. But the executor sister, who actually owns the body, the executor owns the body, was not on board. And so my role was to phone and talk to the executor's sister, and kind of explain things to her and help make her sort of feel more comfortable about the whole situation. And then, we've talked about Maddie doing in-person practice sessions. When my mom died, it was my son and one of my students who came to help me with. You need 3 people. You need 3 people to do it. It's, I mean, Nicola, you could do it with 2, but it'd be better if it was 3. So there's a whole bunch of ways that we can support each other that aren't just, sort of the normal formal mentoring kind of situation. And definitely, there's no reason why Maddie and I couldn't, like, actually somebody set up a laptop, looking at the body, and if we see something happening we think is just dangerous, somebody's going to get hurt by the way they're trying to do things, like particularly lifting the body up onto the side. There's specific ways of doing that that makes it safer. Then we can see that and help out. So all of those things are possible, and we're quite happy to do them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So one more thing, and we're getting close to our end here, about 15 minutes. There's something I wanted to share, screen share here. And I believe that the chat will be saved as well. So I will include that to everyone here so that we all have the information that's been shared on the chat there. Just a second now. I wanted to show you the map of green burial in BC because it's kind of interesting. What do I do here? Share. Got it. That's it. Here we go. Is that sharing now?
Yep.
Are you seeing that? Yep. So
Yep.
this this is on the Green Burial in BC website and anyone can access it. But when I talk about Beyond Hope, all these little green trees here are natural burial, either cemeteries or green burial available in conventional cemeteries. And then there's just, so hope is, hope's about in here, right? So we're beyond hope. And so natural burial options in the rest of this tremendously huge forested, beautiful province are almost nil, right? We've got one in Fort St. John, that's a conventional cemetery. Also, Smithers is a conventional cemetery. Prince George is a conventional cemetery. So we have no natural burial or conservation burial cemeteries anywhere in most of the north of the province. They're all down here. So, you can go in and look at where they are. And then over on the left side, there is the list and they'll tell you a little bit about them. So I continue to work very hard to make sure that we've got more natural burial options because I don't have one right now unless I decide to be buried.
You're missing
Go ahead.
Langley. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, I worked so hard on getting
Sorry?
Langley. I got 10 spaces in the Langley Cemetery. I can't think of the name now, but just a few months ago, thought I'd send you the writing on that. Last spring, I met with the mayor of Langley and had a half-hour conversation.
It's not Heritage Gardens, is it? Isn't that where
No,
you have
Heritage
your?
Gardens in Surrey. No,
Okay.
that's Surrey. That's where I bought my plots there.
So
in
can you
Heritage.
send me the information about the Langley Cemetery, Marcel?
Yeah, I thought I said it already. Sorry about that. But
Maybe
I
you
know we're
did. Would
about
you
to
send
get
it
going.
again?
I will, sure will. And but I
Thanks.
want to thank you. You're my superstar, and you're wonderful, and I really appreciate what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad
But
you could make it tonight,
yeah,
Marcel.
I'm gonna have to get back on the road here.
Okay, thank you.
And
Safe
Good night.
travels.
Bye-bye.
Nickel, I wanted to say that hopefully Creston is coming quickly to be put on your map. Fingers crossed.
Good. What, in the municipal cemetery?
Yes.
Good, excellent. I know there have been folks working on that for quite a few years now, eh?
Yeah.
Good. Go.
Nicole, I'm wondering if there is a master email list where we all could be placed, because I know I found this particular evening here, who knows how, but if you were telling us by our emails, and you may or may not have mine, I have several people in this little area of Kentucky, and my own burial plot is in a church, which is very interested, a Presbyterian church, no less. And I had to become a member to be buried in that particular site. But it's got to grow. It has to grow. And so I would love to be part of the push in the rear to get this to be more visible in this part of Central America.
Well, I certainly have you on my email list now, Oriole. And so I will continue to let you know when these sessions come up. And as I say, we'll share this chat over here. So if you've put your email in the chat, then perhaps anyone else who's doing something interesting will let you know. And I'm still using social media. I know a lot of people are leaving. It's an excellent way to reach people. And so I will continue to use Facebook and Instagram. And I have greenburialbc.ca website where there's quite a few resources and where I generally let people know about these sessions. So yeah. Anyone else want to have something to share or ask or?
Community Death Care Canada page on Facebook you could follow. There's lots of stuff gets posted there for events and things, and also Cyndia has a newsletter that goes out intermittently too.
And Facebook
And the page of resources that I've put together, Oriole, has quite a few of these resources that other folks are talking about, so I will send that along, including the Death and Dying Network International, a couple of amazing women who have created just an awesome community of people.
May I ask, where are the gentlemen?
We had a couple here tonight.
We did, but how many women did we have?
Well, hey, if you've got any men at these groups, it's a win, Oriel.
Yes, it is.
I have one word, men.
Well, bring them in.
Statistically, I know this is probably something some of you have heard, but in the United States anyway, in funeral, was it in the next 5 years, 60% of funeral directors will be retiring, and the upcoming generation of funeral directors is predominantly female.
And young.
And yeah, well, yeah.
Hey,
Okay, so thank you.
thanks for
Thank
sticking
you.
with us on the bus there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't want to keep you guys like bumping all over the place. And I look forward
Thank you
to
all
keeping
very
in
much,
contact.
Maddie,
Yeah.
Pashta.
I
Thank
look
you.
forward to seeing more information. The course wise seems to be very interesting. $300, yeah, sounds like a good deal.
Absolutely. Sign up. Bring friends.
One of the things I didn't say, Jarrett, one of the
Yeah.
things I didn't say is there's a whole bunch of sense. If you were a death doula, which literally goes up to death, the death, to then carry on with a home as a home funeral guide, because you already know the family. You already know a lot of what's important for them, and they're already have built a relationship with you. So most of the people who take the course are death doulas who are wanting to cross that barrier from pre-death to pan-death.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. Have a beautiful evening.
It's been a great evening. Hope to see you all again soon.
Be well, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for being
Thank
here.
you.
Nice to meet you guys.